she was too old for every man, until a broken rancher said, "You're perfect for me." These words don't begin with romance, they begin with rejection. They open on a woman who has learned how to smile politely when hope walks past her, on a woman whose age has been treated like a verdict rather than a chapter. In a world that measures worth by timelines and expectations, she has been quietly pushed to the margins, overlooked, underestimated, and told in 1,000 subtle ways that her season has passed. This is not just her story. It is the story of anyone who has ever been judged before being known. And then there is the rancher, weathered by loss, bent by mistakes, carrying a silence that speaks louder than words. He does not arrive as a rescuer, but as someone equally broken, equally tired of pretending. When their paths cross, it isn't fireworks that change everything. It's recognition. A moment where two people see past labels, past years, past scars, and choose truth over fear. This story invites us to question who sets the rules of love, who decides timing, and why the most unexpected connections often carry the deepest healing. Age as a label versus age as wisdom is one of the quietest, yet most powerful conflicts in human stories, because it lives beneath conversations, beneath glances, beneath polite smiles that hide judgment. From an early age, people are taught to see life as a race with checkpoints. Love by this age, success by that age, stability by another. Over time, these checkpoints harden into labels, and age becomes less about lived experience and more about perceived value. A number replaces a name. A birthday replaces a story. For many women especially, age is treated not as a record of survival but as a warning sign, a reason to disqualify before understanding. The label speaks first, and wisdom is never asked to speak at all. When age is used as a label, it becomes a limitation imposed from the outside. It defines what someone is allowed to want, dream, or receive. It tells a woman that love has an expiration date, that beauty has a deadline, that relevance fades quietly if she does not meet the expectations of others. This kind of thinking strips age of its depth and turns it into something shallow and transactional. It ignores the nights survived alone, the lessons learned through loss, the strength built through disappointment. It forgets that time does not only take things away, it also gives clarity, resilience, and self-knowledge. A label cannot hold all that, so it reduces age to a single dismissive meaning. Wisdom, on the other hand, is what age becomes when it is allowed to breathe. Wisdom is not loud. It does not announce itself with perfection or certainty. It shows up in restraint, in patience, in knowing when to walk away and when to stay. Wisdom is learning that love is not about proving worth, but about recognizing it. It is understanding that timing is not something to control, but something to respect. A woman who has lived, loved, lost, and continued is not late to life. She is seasoned by it. Her age is not a gap, but a gathering of moments that shaped her into someone capable of deeper connection. The tension between label and wisdom is often reinforced by society's fear of aging. Youth is celebrated because it is seen as potential, while age is treated as conclusion. But this ignores a fundamental truth. Potential does not disappear with time, it evolves. The potential of youth is raw and untested, while the potential of maturity is informed and intentional. When age is labeled negatively, it discourages people from seeing the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and who you are not. It teaches people to chase what is new rather than what is true. For a woman told she is too old, the damage is not only external, it becomes internal. She may begin to question her own desires, to shrink her expectations, to apologize for wanting what she still has every right to want. She may start believing that love offered later in life is a compromise rather than a gift. This internalization of the label can be more painful than rejection itself, because it separates her from her own wisdom. It convinces her that experience is a liability rather than an asset, that her story makes her less desirable instead of more complete. Yet wisdom has a way of waiting patiently. It does not argue with labels, it outlives them. Wisdom understands that love built on appearances and timelines is fragile, while love built on recognition is enduring. A wise heart knows that connection is not about fitting into someone else's ideal, but about aligning with someone who sees reality and chooses it. Wisdom allows a person to stand still when the world tells them to rush, to remain open when disappointment suggests closing off. It teaches discernment, not bitterness. In the contrast between age as a label and age as wisdom, there is also a difference in how people see others. Label-driven thinking looks quickly and judges immediately. It asks surface questions and expects predictable answers. Wisdom-driven seeing looks slowly and listens deeply. It is curious rather than critical. It recognizes that everyone carries unseen histories and that those histories are not flaws but context. When someone sees age as wisdom, they are not threatened by experience. They are drawn to it. They understand that scars can be maps, showing where someone has been and how they survived. This distinction becomes especially powerful when two people meet who have both been labeled and broken. One may have been dismissed for age, the other for failure, loss, or weakness. Society often categorizes people harshly, leaving little room for complexity. But wisdom recognizes complexity as honesty. It understands that brokenness does not disqualify someone from love. It prepares them for it. When age is seen as wisdom, it allows space for empathy, for patience, for a kind of love that is not rushed by fantasy, but grounded in reality. Age as wisdom also reframes time itself. Instead of seeing the past as something to regret, wisdom sees it as something to integrate. Every year lived becomes part of a foundation rather than a burden. This perspective changes how love is approached. Love is no longer about chasing intensity or proving value. It becomes about building safety, respect, and mutual understanding. Wisdom knows that passion without understanding fades, but understanding can deepen passion in ways youth alone cannot sustain. The problem with labels is that they are final, while wisdom is ongoing. A label freezes someone at a moment, while wisdom allows for growth. When age is labeled, it suggests that the best chapters are already written. When age is honored as wisdom, it suggests that the most meaningful chapters may still be unfolding. This shift in perspective restores dignity to experience and hope to those who have been told their time is over. It reminds them that life is not a straight line but a series of seasons, each with its own purpose. Choosing wisdom over labels requires courage, because it goes against dominant narratives. It asks people to look beyond what is socially rewarded and into what is emotionally true. It challenges shallow standards and invites deeper questions. Who is this person really? What have they learned? How do they love now? These questions lead to connections that are less flashy but more faithful, less dramatic but more enduring. Wisdom does not promise perfection, it promises honesty. For the woman judged by age, embracing wisdom means reclaiming authorship of her own story. It means understanding that her worth was never dependent on someone else's timeline. It means recognizing that the right connection will not ask her to be younger, smaller, or quieter, but will meet her where she is, fully formed and unapologetic. Wisdom gives her the strength to wait not for approval, but for alignment. Ultimately, age, as wisdom invites a redefinition of love itself. Love becomes less about finding someone impressive, and more about finding someone true. It becomes an act of seeing and being seen, without filters or fear. In this space, age is no longer something to defend or explain. It simply is, carrying with it the richness of lived experience, the softness earned through hardship, and the strength built through survival. Wisdom does not erase the pain of being labeled, but it transforms that pain into clarity, into depth, into a quieter, stronger kind of hope broken people recognizing. Real love is a theme that cuts against the popular fantasy of perfect beginnings and flawless connections. Society often celebrates love stories that start with confidence, success, and emotional wholeness, as if love is a reward reserved for those who have already figured life out. But real love often begins in the opposite place. It begins in exhaustion, in disappointment, in the quiet moments when people are no longer performing for the world. Brokenness, in this sense, is not about being damaged beyond repair. It is about having been shaped by loss, mistakes, and unmet expectations. It is about carrying evidence of living. When people are broken, they tend to see the world differently. Illusions fall away. Pretenses lose their appeal. A broken heart learns the cost of shallow affection and becomes more sensitive to sincerity. Someone who has been hurt no longer looks for grand promises. They look for consistency. They are less impressed by words and more attentive to actions. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is awareness. It is the kind of perception that allows real love to be recognized when it appears quietly, without drama or spectacle. Broken people often recognize real love because they are no longer searching for validation. They have learned, sometimes painfully, that being chosen for the wrong reasons feels lonelier than being alone. Having faced rejection or failure, they understand that love built on ego or convenience collapses under pressure. This understanding sharpens discernment. Instead of asking, "Does this person make me look good?" they ask, "Does this person feel safe? Do they see me as I am?" Real love answers those questions without needing to be asked. There is also a humility that grows out of brokenness. When life has humbled someone, they are less likely to idealize themselves or others. They know their own flaws and therefore are not shocked by imperfection in someone else. This creates room for compassion. Instead of demanding completeness, broken people offer patience. Instead of expecting someone to fix them, they understand that healing is personal and ongoing. This mutual humility allows love to form without pressure, without the burden of unrealistic expectations. In contrast, people who have never been broken may mistake intensity for intimacy. They may confuse excitement with connection, or attention with affection. Broken people have usually learned the difference. They know that real love is often quiet, steady, and sometimes even uncomfortable because it requires honesty. It invites vulnerability without guaranteeing outcomes. It asks for presence rather than performance. This kind of love can be overlooked by those chasing perfection, but it is immediately recognizable to those who have lived without illusions. Brokenness also deepens empathy. Someone who has suffered understands pain in others without needing explanations. They can sit with discomfort without rushing to solve it. This ability to stay present during emotional difficulty is essential for real love. Love is not proven in moments of ease, but in moments of strain. Broken people know this instinctively. They do not expect love to remove pain. They hope love will be willing to stand beside it. When two broken people meet, there is often an unspoken understanding. They recognize familiar silences, guarded hopes, and cautious optimism. This recognition does not require shared trauma. It requires shared honesty. They sense when someone is no longer pretending to have everything together. In that space, defenses soften. There is less pressure to impress and more willingness to be real. This environment allows love to grow organically, rooted in truth rather than fantasy. Real love, when recognized by broken people, is not idealized as a cure. They do not expect love to erase their past or compensate for their pain. Instead, they see love as companionship in the present. It becomes a choice to walk together rather than a promise of rescue. This perspective protects love from becoming transactional. Each person takes responsibility for their own healing while offering support without control. This balance creates stability. Broken people also tend to value acceptance over admiration. Admiration can feel conditional, dependent on maintaining an image. Acceptance feels safer because it allows space for change, mistakes, and growth. Real love offers acceptance without stagnation. It says, "I see who you are, and I am still here." For someone who has experienced rejection or loss, this message is profoundly healing. It affirms worth without demanding transformation as a prerequisite. There is a paradox in brokenness. It can make people cautious, yet it can also make them brave. Cautious because they know the cost of opening up. Brave because they know survival is possible even after heartbreak. This bravery allows them to risk connection again, not out of naivety but out of hope informed by experience. When they recognize real love, they are willing to protect it, nurture it, and show up consistently, even when fear whispers reasons to withdraw. Broken people often communicate differently in love. They may speak less but mean more. They may listen more closely and respond more thoughtfully. Their affection is not performative, it is practical. It shows up in small gestures, in reliability, in respect for boundaries. These expressions may not look dramatic, but they are deeply reassuring. Real love for them is measured in trust built over time, rather than intensity felt in moments. The recognition of real love by broken people also challenges cultural narratives that equate healing with independence. While self-sufficiency is valuable, broken people understand that interdependence is human. Real love does not threaten autonomy, it complements it. It allows two incomplete people to share life without trying to complete each other. This understanding reduces fear and control, creating a healthier dynamic. Ultimately, broken people recognize real love because they have learned what false love costs. They have felt the emptiness of being chosen for convenience, the pain of being misunderstood, the exhaustion of trying to be enough for someone else's expectations. These experiences refine perception. They make sincerity stand out. They make kindness visible. They make steadiness attractive. Real love does not need to announce itself. It is felt in the absence of anxiety, in the presence of peace, in the quiet assurance that someone is not going anywhere even when things are difficult. In this way, brokenness becomes not a barrier to love, but a lens through which love can be seen clearly. It strips away illusions and leaves behind what matters most: presence, honesty, patience, and mutual respect. When broken people recognize real love, they do not cling to it out of fear, they choose it out of clarity. They understand that love is not about being saved, but about being understood, accepted, and accompanied through the ongoing work of living. Society's judgment versus personal truth is a conflict that shapes countless lives, often quietly and relentlessly. Society has a way of creating standards that appear universal but are deeply narrow. These standards define what success looks like, what love should resemble, when certain milestones must be reached, and who is considered worthy at each stage of life. They are reinforced through conversations, media, traditions, and even silence. Over time, these judgments become so familiar that they feel natural, almost unquestionable. Yet beneath their authority lies a fragile foundation built on comparison rather than understanding. Society's judgment operates by simplifying people into categories. It reduces complex human beings into labels that are easy to evaluate and dismiss. Age, status, appearance, past mistakes, and perceived failures become shorthand for worth. Once someone is categorized, their individuality becomes invisible. Their inner world, their growth, and their intentions are overshadowed by assumptions. Society rarely asks who a person truly is. It asks how well they fit an expectation. This process is efficient, but it is not humane. Personal truth, in contrast, is slow and often uncomfortable. It emerges from self-reflection, experience, and emotional honesty. Personal truth does not always align with what is celebrated or approved. It may challenge traditions, disrupt timelines, or contradict advice that was given with good intentions but limited understanding. Living in personal truth requires listening inward rather than outward, and this can feel isolating. When someone chooses their truth, they often risk misunderstanding, criticism, or rejection. The tension between society's judgment and personal truth becomes especially intense in matters of love. Society promotes specific narratives about who should be with whom and why. It suggests that love should follow a predictable order and appear a certain way from the outside. When someone's reality does not match this script, judgment quickly follows. Questions turn into critiques, concern turns into control. What is framed as guidance often masks discomfort with difference. Society struggles to accept love that does not look familiar, even when it is sincere. Personal truth in love is deeply individual. It is not dictated by age, appearance, or social approval. It is shaped by connection, understanding, and alignment of values. When someone follows their personal truth, they prioritize how a relationship feels over how it looks. They value peace over performance. This choice can be threatening to societal norms because it exposes their limitations. It reveals that happiness is not one size fits all, and that fulfillment cannot be standardized. Society's judgment often disguises itself as protection. It claims to know what is best, what is safe, what will lead to happiness. But these claims are usually based on averages, not individuals. They overlook nuance and context. They fail to account for growth, change, and resilience. Personal truth, on the other hand, is informed by lived experience. It recognizes patterns that outsiders cannot see. It understands what brings calm and what causes harm. This knowledge is earned, not assumed. Choosing personal truth over societal judgment requires courage, because it involves uncertainty. Society offers clear rules and familiar paths, even if they are limiting. Personal truth offers authenticity but not guarantees. It asks someone to trust themselves, sometimes for the first time. This trust can feel risky, especially for those who have been taught to doubt their own instincts. Yet without this risk, true fulfillment remains out of reach. Society's judgment can be loud, but it is also shallow. It reacts to appearances and outcomes rather than intentions and effort. It celebrates success without acknowledging struggle and condemns failure without recognizing learning. Personal truth holds space for imperfection. It allows someone to be in process. It does not require justification or explanation to outsiders. It simply exists as an internal alignment between belief and action. The pressure to conform to societal judgment can cause people to abandon their truth. They may stay in relationships that look acceptable but feel empty. They may leave connections that feel right but are disapproved of. Over time, this disconnect creates resentment and regret. Living against one's truth erodes self-trust and dulls emotional awareness. It teaches people to prioritize approval over authenticity, safety over fulfillment. When someone does choose personal truth, society often responds with skepticism. Questions are asked not to understand, but to challenge. Motives are scrutinized. Mistakes are anticipated. This response can be painful, especially when it comes from loved ones, but it also reveals an important reality. Society is more comfortable with predictability than happiness. It prefers consistency over contentment, even when consistency leads to quiet suffering. Personal truth is not about rebellion for its own sake. It is not about rejecting all norms or advice. It is about discernment. It is about knowing which voices to listen to and which to release. A person living in personal truth can still value community, tradition, and guidance, but they do not surrender their inner authority. They integrate external input without losing themselves. The conflict between society's judgment and personal truth also affects how people see themselves. When societal messages are internalized, self-worth becomes conditional. It depends on meeting expectations rather than honoring reality. Personal truth restores unconditional worth. It affirms that value is inherent, not earned through compliance. This shift is transformative. It changes how someone loves, chooses, and shows up in the world. Ultimately, society's judgment has power only when it is accepted as final. Personal truth reclaims that power by refusing to let external opinions define internal reality. It does not demand agreement or validation. It simply insists on honesty. In doing so, it opens the door to relationships and lives built on alignment rather than approval, sincerity rather than appearance, and meaning rather than measurement. Healing begins where acceptance starts, because rejection, whether from others or from oneself, creates wounds that cannot be closed by effort alone. Many people believe healing comes from fixing what is broken, changing what is flawed, or becoming something more acceptable. This belief turns healing into a task rather than a process, a performance rather than a surrender. Acceptance shifts this understanding. It does not deny pain or excuse harm. It simply acknowledges reality without resistance. In that acknowledgement, something softens, and what softens can begin to heal. Acceptance starts with seeing what is, not what should have been. It is the moment someone stops arguing with their past and begins listening to it. Pain that is denied grows louder, while pain that is accepted begins to settle. This does not mean approving of what hurt or minimizing its impact. It means recognizing that the hurt happened and that it mattered. Acceptance allows emotions to exist without being judged. It creates space where grief, disappointment, and regret can be felt without being rushed away. Many people delay healing because they believe acceptance equals defeat. They fear that accepting circumstances means giving up hope or lowering standards. In reality, acceptance is not resignation, it is clarity. It removes the energy spent fighting reality and redirects it toward growth. When someone accepts where they are, they can finally decide where they want to go. Healing cannot begin in denial because denial requires constant effort. Acceptance frees that effort and makes healing possible. Self-acceptance is often the most difficult form of acceptance. People are taught to be critical of themselves, to improve by pointing out flaws. Over time, this internal criticism becomes normalized, even justified. But constant self-rejection creates internal conflict. A person cannot heal in an environment of hostility, even if that hostility comes from within. Acceptance changes the internal environment. It replaces punishment with patience. It allows a person to acknowledge mistakes without defining themselves by them. When acceptance begins, shame begins to lose its grip. Shame thrives in secrecy and judgment. It convinces people that they are unworthy of care until they change. Acceptance counters this by affirming worth without conditions. It says that healing is not a reward for perfection but a response to humanity. This message is deeply stabilizing. It allows people to seek support without fear of exposure. It encourages honesty instead of hiding. Acceptance also transforms how people experience love. Many enter relationships hoping to be accepted by someone else before they accept themselves. This creates imbalance. It places the responsibility for healing on another person. When acceptance starts internally, love becomes a place of sharing rather than seeking validation. Relationships become safer because they are not burdened with fixing what only self-acceptance can address. In the context of emotional wounds, acceptance allows boundaries to form naturally. A person who accepts their needs and limits is better equipped to protect them. They no longer tolerate harm in the name of endurance. They no longer confuse suffering with loyalty. Acceptance clarifies what is healthy and what is not. It empowers choice without aggression. Healing thrives in this clarity because it reduces re-injury. Acceptance does not mean ignoring the desire for change. It means recognizing that change grows best from compassion rather than criticism. A person who accepts their current state can still pursue growth, but the motivation shifts. Growth becomes an act of care rather than correction. This shift reduces burnout and increases sustainability. Healing becomes something lived, not something chased. When someone experiences acceptance from another person, the impact can be profound. Being seen without being judged challenges long-held beliefs about worth. It introduces a new emotional reference point. This external acceptance can support healing, but it cannot replace self-acceptance. If someone cannot receive acceptance internally, external acceptance may feel temporary or undeserved. Healing deepens when acceptance is both given and received authentically. Acceptance also reframes identity. Instead of defining oneself by wounds or roles, a person begins to see themselves as evolving. They are not frozen at their worst moment or limited by past versions. Acceptance allows identity to be flexible. It honors who someone has been while making room for who they are becoming. This flexibility reduces fear of change and encourages exploration. Resistance to acceptance often comes from fear of feeling pain fully. Many people believe that if they accept their pain, it will overwhelm them. In truth, suppressed pain exerts more control than acknowledged pain. Acceptance allows pain to move rather than stagnate. It gives pain an outlet. Over time, this movement reduces intensity. Healing is not the absence of pain but the integration of it. Acceptance also changes the relationship with time. People stop rushing their healing process when they accept where they are. They release comparisons and timelines. Healing becomes less about milestones and more about moments of ease, insight, and connection. This patience reduces pressure and allows progress to occur organically. In relationships, acceptance creates emotional safety. When people feel accepted, they are more likely to be honest. Honesty deepens trust. Trust supports vulnerability. Vulnerability strengthens connection. Healing often occurs within these dynamics not because pain is erased, but because it is shared without fear. Acceptance is the foundation that makes this possible. Acceptance is also an act of self-respect. It acknowledges limits without shame. It allows rest without guilt. It permits asking for help without embarrassment. These behaviors support healing by reducing stress and increasing support. A person who accepts themselves is less likely to abandon themselves during difficulty. The journey of healing is rarely linear. There are moments of progress and moments of setback. Acceptance steadies this journey. It allows setbacks to be seen as information rather than failure. This perspective prevents discouragement from becoming self-criticism. Healing continues even when it feels slow. Ultimately, healing begins where acceptance starts, because acceptance creates the conditions necessary for restoration. It replaces judgment with understanding, resistance with openness, and fear with presence. In this environment, wounds are not forced closed, they are allowed to breathe, and in that breathing, strength quietly returns.